No way. None. But that's something you can bring up. It won't, but we can talk about it later. It won't. Does have nothing to do with that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you can ask that. I don't know if he'll know that question, but yeah. Yeah, this is more going to be about the actual, well, just about what it could look like. Yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah, fire away. He likes questions. He thrives on them. He's very good. Okay. Okay, if we could all grab a seat. Thank you. You're on. You're ready to rock. Being down here is okay, or do we need to be on the stage? Oh, let's just do it here, and then that. Are you okay to be here instead of up there?
No,
I don't want lightning to hit you.
To be honest, I'd be more. Stand near the drum set. I'll get crashed.
That's
So
right.
I'm probably a little bit better on the floor with
Okay,
everybody else.
perfect. So if everyone grab a seat, no matter where you are. This is not a voting meeting. This is so you don't have to be in a special spot to vote. This is a discussion. You can ask questions. Everybody up in the balcony, either take it outside or get down here because you're too loud and it's annoying. Get down here.
See, that's already making me feel better.
We can do that. People in the foyer, come on down. All right, thank you guys for coming down. You're allowed to be a part of this, you know, you don't have to hide in the balcony. So it's all about information today, okay? This is all about information, about what we've been working on for just under a year, I would say. Under a year we've been working on it. Last AGM, you got your next AGM coming up here November 4th. We discussed the property, residential, what we could do, new building, if we get somebody to come in and do this for us. This is like, we had a plan, we had a vision, we had an idea. You guys said, yeah, go for it, find out, get some information. That has all come down to today. We've been the phases that it goes through. I'll get Ryan, I'm going to introduce him, but he'll talk to you about what that means. I alluded to a little bit in my message today that this is not done just off the cuff. This is over a long period of time, having discussions, talking about things with the board. The board, we have all the minutes for those discussions, so it has happened. All that stuff has been going down. Meeting with Ryan, getting him prepared. There is a beginning of a building committee, but there was nothing to discuss other than get things in place to bring it to you. So we don't have like a big, large thing that comes as things move forward. Because there'll be more things to talk about, and then you bring to the board, and then the board decides on whether they like that or not, and then they bring it to you, to the congregation to vote on, yada, yada, yada. That's all technical jargon for it moves forward. So that's why you haven't heard a lot, because we've been trying to iron out the details. And the details, we're figuring out where, what, how, why, when, what this looks like, city stuff, and just here's our vision. This is what we want to be as a church in the neighborhood. And Ryan has got a great heart for people. He is, we get along very well, have great discussions. I want you to know that. I will miss that. But we're going to meet anyway, so we'll do stuff. But it is great, the talking, the vision. He has a fantastic mindset. So I want to turn it over to Ryan from OTG Developments. He wears a lot of hats, does a lot of things, really smart guy. He likes questions, and if he can't answer them, he'll tell you. Well, here's why, blah, 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 I can't answer that. So I'm going to turn everything over to Ryan, and I would like you to give him a nice warm welcome. This is a happy family here, and there's only good questions. So come on up, Ryan, thank you. Let me turn that on for you. There you go, that should be running.
Hello. Oh, there we are. Hi, my name is Ryan Anderson. Thank you for the introduction. I own a few different companies that are almost all geared towards land development. So I own one that does project management, which is OTG, which basically means that developers or people that own land come and see us, and we help them through the land development process. I own another company that does survey work. We just actually turned a corner on that. The surveyor that I had just finished his non-compete 2 Saturdays ago, so we can do legal surveys now. And I own an environmental company as well that does environmental reporting and arborist reporting. So everything we do is bent at land development. So I was contacted by a member of I should tell you too, I'm Catholic. So I've already been corrected in using a wrong word earlier. So if feel free to yell out at me. We don't use that word here, Ryan. So, because my guilt will otherwise kill me. So, in any event, so a member of the congregation, correct? Thank you. All right, I'm off to a good start. Contacted me and originally said, you know, we've got this older church and we want to redevelop it. A tremendous site, and it is a tremendous site, 2 acres-ish, flat, serviced in Surrey. It's excellent land. And we want to build a new church. You know, can you help us out with that? And it sort of morphed from there into, we'll get into this a little bit more. I've put a brief PowerPoint presentation together here. It sort of morphed from there into me throwing all of our resources at it. I have partners. I'd like to pretend I can do everything on my own, but I can't. And so the partners, the survey biologists, I've got another partner. It's a company I don't own any part of that does building design and such like that. So I said, well, we can throw all of our resources at trying to put this together. It's a tremendously expensive total project. I can't tell you for sure how much it would be, but I'm guessing in the area of $30 to $40 million in total, what was roughly spoken to me about. This is a tremendous amount of money, obviously. So what I suggested is that we've got a Rolodex of I don't even know, I'd have to sit down and look, but hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of developers that we work with and have worked with over the years. And what I said was, I wouldn't want certain developers, and this isn't saying that they're bad people, but there's certain of my clients I wouldn't want to put in an arrangement with a church group, because sometimes people tend to get wealthy because they make sure they come out ahead on things, and I needed to avoid that. So what I suggested is, I can probably pick and choose from some of the developers that I've worked with that I know deal very fairly with lots of different types of people. Sometimes large landholders, sometimes other large developers, etc. So I said, look, I can do this. I can put all our resources at it, and I can bring in a potential developer partner that would treat the church and the congregation and everyone else involved fairly, and hopefully then get to where everyone wanted us to get to, which is again a new church. So is that a decent enough introduction of where we are? Okay. So right away we start working on that, as Pastor Mark said, that we've met several times. We've put some preliminary drawings together that we'll go over today, and I'm not sure how to. Is somebody else controlling the PowerPoint presentation? So could the next slide then, please? Okay. So yeah, sort of went over this a little bit. So the proposal basically is build a new church. This would be what I would be doing for the church. Build a new church, demolish the old church, and then build a new development or developments on the remaining lands. And there will be some drawings here that we'll take a look at that'll be more demonstrative of just those words. So OTG and its partners, as I mentioned, will act as project manager and provide the following services. So again, drafting, surveying, environmental consulting, arborist consulting, landscape architecture, and building design. And the reason I put maybe is because that part might not be up to me. It could be that the developer that is eventually chosen by the church has their own architect that they feel more comfortable with. I have an architect that I would like to use for this project for one simple reason. They do a lot of churches. So they're very familiar with, in particular, what Pentecostal churches look like, and I believe they've even designed some Pentecostal churches. It's interesting, actually. I never realized that until I started looking into it, that there's some sort of conformity in designs between different, what's the word I'm looking for? Thank you, denominations, yeah. In any event, maybe next slide then, please. So this is basically what we have right now. We have that, the rough footprint there is basically taken off the internet. And it may or may not be in that exact location, but this is essentially what we're dealing with as far as a footprint is concerned right now. So this existing church sitting on approximately 2 acres of land. Next slide, please. Okay, it's a little bit hard to see, and I want to be super clear about this. Can everyone see that rectangle in the top right corner there? So what I was asked to do was aim at 8,000 to 9,000 square feet of church. And this would include, other uses within that church, whether they're office uses, kitchen uses, this type of thing. So, but I want to be clear that this is just to show one thing and one thing only. I'm not proposing a perfectly rectangle church to replace this church. What I'm showing here more than anything else, or attempting to show, is that the new church could theoretically at this time be built whilst still retaining the old church. So if this is possible, and I'm still using the word if, because we have completed survey work at this time, but the example I gave when I met with the committee last time is, let's for instance say that I go into City Hall and they say we need a supplemental setback off of 176 that eats up an additional few meters. It could squeeze us, and then maybe we can't do it. But as of right now, with the information that is available, it does look like we'll be able to retain the existing church and then eventually build a new church and eventually remove the existing church. So again, I just want to be super clear about this. I'm not proposing that we build the cheapest rectangular shaped building we possibly, rectangle buildings are cheap, corners are dollars. I used to be an assessor and appraiser as well. Corners are dollars. So I'm not proposing that. I'm just saying, look, we can do this. It looks like we can do this. Next slide, please. So this is sort of keeping within that same ideology, showing that we would very likely, we'd have to do some research to make sure that this is true and how true it is, but very likely like try and get underground parking underneath the whole site, okay? This is primarily reliant on geotechnical information. I'm unfamiliar at this time with what's under our feet right now, but it makes a massive difference. And my main office is it is in Chilliwack. And we run into these problems all the time in Chilliwack because we have a very high water table. So a lot of times people will come and say, hey, I've got this property and, I can put 130 units on it. I'm like, if you could get 2 stories into the ground with parking, you could, but my guess is in Chilliwack we can only do 3/4 into the ground, which then severely diminishes how many units you can put into a building because our parking ratio needs to meet our number of units and our uses. So the church itself would have a certain amount of a parking requirement. And if we can't get underground or can only get 3/4 in, it would change the square footage and then any density outside of that use. Does that make sense to everybody? Mostly nodding heads, that's great. Okay, and then next slide then, please. Okay, this is a little bit backwards, but one of the questions, and this is me attempting to address it, one of the questions that I got early on was, well, Ryan, what happens if on the far end of this deal, the developer does really, really, really well in this situation? And at first I was thinking to myself, well, that's sort of along the lines of saying, I sold a house in 2010 for $250,000. In 2023, it's worth $1.2 million. Somebody owes me $900,000, right? We can't really do that. But what we ended up saying in the developers that I've spoken to thus far, and all of them are in agreement, is we can cap the profit. And anything that is in excess of that cap, we would then potentially, details need to be negotiated, but in simple terms, what we're looking at is if the profit exceeded a certain cap, then we would either build another building or provide money to the church in excess of whatever the developer is. I'm not going to mince words here. A developer is very unlikely to participate in this unless they can make money. I work for a lot of philanthropists, I really do, but very few of them are into philanthropic development. It's just real, and I just really want everybody to know that. It would be wonderful if we could come across somebody that would do this, at cost or just making sure they broke even. But it's highly, highly unlikely that we're ever going to find that. So there's going to be profit. That's what's going to get a developer to entertain partnering with the church. Okay. So, but that second rectangle in the bottom there, what we're trying to say is, should we exceed a certain amount of profit, or the developer exceed a certain amount of profit, we would look to then give that money back to the church to either build a commercial unit or institutional unit. Institutional to me basically church use, assembly use, soup kitchens, these types of things. So it'd be up to the church what they did with that. Next slide, please. So this is the sort of total vision. And again, I really want to hammer this point home. I don't foresee things that look as square and nice as these in the future. But this is just demonstrative of square footages. So what this shows is the ultimate goal, which is now existing church removed, a new church residing on the property. At this point, the likely use is a multifamily building, although I have my own opinions on commercial, but a developer partner may have different opinions than me on commercial. They'll look to do whatever they think makes the most sense, okay? But at this point, residential, and especially from the city's standpoint, where we're really lacking in the Lower Mainland and British Columbia generally in affordable housing. And I don't want to say that we're doing an affordable housing, because that immediately makes everyone think that there's going to be people doing heroin outside the church, and that's not what affordable housing actually is. Sometimes it's, if you look at the way it's actually defined, it can even be people that make, $110,000 still qualify for affordable housing. But right now, this is geared at standard housing, okay? But Surrey in particular is trying to find ways to densify and increase housing. So that would be primarily for me as of today. Somebody else might be able to talk me out of it, but as of today, what we'd be looking at is on the balance of the land is some form of multifamily development, because this would be the most appealing, in my opinion, to the city of Surrey and staff and council, okay? Because we are going to push, and I always say to people, if I'm standing here, or if I'm in a room or a meeting or what have you, it's usually not because the project is super simple, right? We're going to push. We're going to try and get as much density as possible. We're going to try and get as big a building as possible. We're going to try and maximize the returns on the situation. And with any luck, this works out really well for everybody involved. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to get a lot of questions about this, so I'm going to try and get rid of as much of them as possible. Please do not think that this is exactly what we're going to end up doing. This is just showing what a shared underground floor of parking would look like. And this is almost more for us looking at it, trying to figure out, okay, well, where do we get density? Because generally speaking, as I noted earlier, if you have a 20-unit apartment building, then you're probably going to need somewhere between 30 and 40 parking stalls to service that facility. And the church, that calculation would be different. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it would be based on a per square meter density. So this is us sort of doing our preliminary going, okay, how many parking stalls could we get if we can get 2 stories? And then what does that mean for the total development? So I get it though, if you look at this, you're like, Ryan, that doesn't make any sense. I can't see how they're getting down there. I can't see how the church is sharing it, etc. This is just me showing we can get quite a bit of parking, and if we can get 2 stories, we can get a lot of parking on the site, okay? Getting back to the idea that I have to put a shovel in the ground, well, not even a shovel. Basically what we would do is we would drill a hole into the ground. We would take a look at what the material looks like, and we would see where we hit water, and that would help us decide how far into the ground can we dig and how big of a hole can we create, okay? Last slide, please. Is it the last slide? Second last slide. Okay, so process. We are in phase 1. I thought that I put a we are here in phase 1. I was a little, like, I just got off a week of vacation, so it's you'll have to excuse me, I'm home for a rest. Yeah, does anyone get that joke, the song? Thank you, anyways. So research and preliminary planning. So basically that's where we are. And this is always, you know, especially in a situation like this where you've got moving parts, you've got, you know, church group, you've got members of the congregation, you've got me, you've got potential for developers. It couldn't be done quick, and it probably shouldn't be done quickly. You want to pace that decision-making process and make sure that everyone is at least comfortable with the information that they've been provided, and then the decision that they make based on that information. So we're slogging our way through phase 1. I can tell you, as you've seen, we've done some preliminary drawings. We're comfortable at this point that the existing church could remain, as we talked about. We've put out some feelers with staff and the council and the mayor here in Surrey, and we do feel like we would be able to push on the density and get more out of what the official community plan would allow for right now. So that's all part of the research phase. Like, what does the official community plan say about this property right now? How do the services look? What does the existing zone allow for? All of these types of things. We're in that preliminary research. As I said, we've also done some survey work. The next thing, this is all at our cost too. This is costing the church absolutely nothing. I'm trying to put my best foot forward and show that I can be a good partner to the group. So we haven't sent any invoices or anything, nor would we. Well, that was the agreement. But we're trying to put our best foot forward by doing survey work. We will get an appraisal. That'll be the starting point in understanding how the money of the whole agreement would work. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the next step is I would hire a geotechnical engineer to unfortunately rip up part of your parking lot and put a few holes in there, but they fill them back in. Okay. So that's where we are right now is phase 1. So the culmination of phase 1 in my mind would be when the church has met and the committee has met with the different developers that I've selected and then made a decision either to go with one of those 4 or to say, no, none of those feel comfortable to us. You know, we've got our own, or we'd like you to go back to the drawing board and bring somebody else in. But it's like I said, you know, you got to take my word for it, I guess, at this point. Although, like I said, I am Catholic, so I feel if I tell a lie standing up here, lightning will come straight down and let you all know that I'm not telling the truth here. But it's like I said, in my opinion, we work for a lot of different people, and the 4 people that I've selected, we've done business with and where we've put deals together, and they've always made sure the saying we use is that there's meat on the bone for everybody, and make sure that it works well for everybody, and that's how you put these deals together. And one of the things I've been saying to Mark and Brian in particular is, you know, to be blunt, I don't want to do this once. Like, I have partners, you know, I'm obviously going to charge a fee for putting this whole project together and bringing in a developer and everything. But with my partners, it's not going to be enough money for me to retire, unfortunately. I know I look like I probably am close, but you know, I've got a few years to go. So what I'd really like out of this situation is that we do a wonderful, wonderful job, and this isn't the first one, or pardon me, this isn't the last one. This is just the first one, and we get a good reputation for having treated the church fairly, and they're happy with the product. You are happy with the product that we have by the end. And I know Mark and I spoke about, he goes to these meetings with apparently other Catholics, which is surprising to me. But, and different denominations and representatives and pastors and ministers and reverends and everything, and priests apparently too. So, and if Mark or then now Patrick, goes to those meetings and says to, people like himself or themselves, that Ryan Anderson treated us right. We're happy with it, and he did everything he said, and he treated us fairly, and we were happy with the developer. That's really good for me. Then with any luck, we can do a few more of these. Then maybe I can retire someday. So once we get through that, then we would do what I would primarily call the paperwork phase, which is land development is primarily about paperwork until shovels hit the ground. We would need, at the very least, OCP amendment, a rezoning application, development permit, and depending on how things worked out, but almost for sure subdivision applications. Those applications almost, I can all but guarantee those applications will be part of this. So, but those are all almost completely paperwork, and that's when you go through the city process, you meet with council, you do public hearings, public information meetings, etc. And I do think those will be very relevant because we are going to be pushing. We're going to be trying to get more than the official community plan currently says that we can have. So there will probably be public information meetings on top of public hearings. Slight nuance, public information meetings are put on by developers. Public hearings are part of the development, rezoning, or OCP process, okay? And then once we get all that paper, then theoretically we can make applications to start doing things like building, and those require building permit applications. And that's when shovels truly hit the ground. That being said, and it's always so hard for me to write these things down because land development is not a straight line, which is great. I love that it's really difficult because it keeps me employed. So, for instance, theoretically, once a deal was put in place and everybody signed and lawyers said it was all good, theoretically, we're zoned for the church. So we theoretically could get right into the development. Well, the development permits aren't applicable to churches, but something tells me they would still make us go through the same process as that anyways. Basically form and character. What is this going to look like? And once we get through that, then theoretically we could apply for building permits. But it's for a variety of reasons, which if people have questions about that, I can get into a little bit more. But for a variety of reasons, I think it'll be a little bit more staggered than that. I think we'll probably want to get through the paperwork, and the developer probably will want to get through the paperwork because the cost of the church that is being kicked around is significant. So it would be difficult to convince a developer to spend, I'm going to go with $6 to $9 million here. Is that fair? Yeah. Without having any form of certainty that the paperwork that we're referring to is going to allow them to proceed in the way that they want to proceed. Okay? So, and then I think the last slide is just me saying, yep, thank you, and questions. So, yeah, so, yes, sir. Yep.
How big is the building that the church will be in?
Okay.
3 stories?
To be honest with you, right now I'm not 100% sure. What I do know is that I've been told to plan for an 8,000 to 9,000 total square foot building. Is that going to be on one sprawling story or 2 stories at this time? My guess would be there would be at least 2 stories, would be my guess at this time. But my understanding of how this process will work is once a developer is selected, then that developer will either use the architect that I'm comfortable with or their own architect, and preliminary drawings will be brought to the board, and the board will make decisions about what the final product looks like.
And the seating capacity?
I honestly have no idea about that. This is just the truth. You have to remember that I help people develop land. That does not make me an expert in the things that I develop. I build industrial complexes for people, but I don't know anything about widgets, right? So how that works for the church, I don't know. What I do know this is the church will be part of the process that decides on square footages, uses, number of rooms, and seating capacity. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just starting to understand this whole process, and I really appreciate
Good.
So
Thank
I'm
you.
just gonna, if you don't mind me speaking out loud what I'm thinking
Mhm.
it is, and then if you could answer my question. So, we hand over this entire property to, a developer who then builds us a building. What will we own in the end?
Yeah.
What does Westwinds own?
So first and foremost, I'll clarify one thing. In no way, shape, or form would we be asking the church to give the land to the developer. Okay, so I really want to be clear about this point as well. I'm going to use totally made up numbers for the sake of answering your question, but these are completely and totally, I believe I'm even being recorded right now, completely and totally made up numbers. Okay, so let's say that we find out the land is worth $1 million, right? And then the church goes, okay, so everyone agrees the land is worth $1 million, developer agrees land is worth $1 million, okay? So then in some ratio that would need to be negotiated, the developer would build $1 million church, roughly speaking, okay, or a product that the church was happy with. And the balance of the land, and again, this is, I'm not 100% sure at this point. Then in the future, do we subdivide off the balance of the land that the developer owns after the fact, or do we keep it all as one and stratify it? To be honest with you, I'm not sure yet. But at the end of the day, the church will retain ownership until the final paperwork is completed and the church is completed and the church is removed. Those, at the very least, that's when the paperwork would change. But prior to then, no. That's and certainly again, the land would never just be given to the developer.
In the end, we still own
Correct.
the building.
Correct. Yeah. And in the end, the church would still own the land and own the building that like I said, does that mean that there's a stratification where, like, you know, you're forever in partnership with the developer? I don't know. I doubt it, because that's sort of messy. What I could see is, in simple terms, probably like line right down the middle. Church owns the land on one side, developer owns the land on the other.
Like a subdivision.
Correct.
When I said hand over,
Mm.
that was very simple, my question.
Yeah, subdivision is the exact right word for it. Exactly right. Yeah. Is that, did I do well?
So we would still own and always own the
Correct.
building,
Correct.
the land that it sits on.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. There's, yeah, unless you did it through a stratification, which itself is legally and technically a subdivision. Yeah. So did I do it? Okay. Yes, sir.
When you talked about and this may not be finalized yet, but the parking structure, when you said, would there be a parking structure that would just be for this church, or would it be shared among the community?
Mhm.
So you talked about, like, if there was a stratification lot, and kind of just said there's parking,
Mhm.
kind of thing. Does the church have its own parking, and then the other buildings have their own
Mhm.
parking, or would we be sharing a lot with everybody?
Yes to every one of those questions. So what, and again, this is really early stages, right? So again, you know, like this is subject to change, but what I'm envisioning right now is a partitioned parking structure, where part of the parking structure would be for church use, and part of the parking structure would be for whatever's on the other side use, you know, say multifamily. The reason, again, like, I really can't stress this enough, like every single time somebody comes and sees us and says, I want to do some form of a multifamily, commercial, or industrial development, we start with the parking, because the parking dictates everything else. If the municipality that you're in has a 1.5 parking spaces per unit, and you know that you can get 30 units, then, if my math is correct here, you can get, or pardon me, 30 parking stalls, then you can get 20 units. Is my math right? My math is right. Yeah. So, like I said, we want to see what we can do. We want to maximize parking over the entire site, and then likely we would partition it so that there are probably two separate entrances, or one entrance that allows either area to be accessed. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. Sir. Yeah, I hate it when I say I don't know too many times in a row, but I don't know for sure. What we've been talking about is, let's use that example again, that we're dealing with $1 million, right? And we say, okay, church construction is, I've done a little bit of research on this, and it sounds like it's hovering in and around $675 a square foot. So take $1 million, divide 675 into it, and we'd end up with our square footage. The church, if they wanted, could theoretically top it up, right? Sort of like an insurance claim. I don't know if anybody's been unlucky like I have when you get your house destroyed by flood water or something like that, but they go, all right, that tile's worth 20 bucks a square foot. It's destroyed. We're going to replace it at 20 bucks a square foot, but if you want to buy a tile that's 30 bucks a square foot and give us the extra 10 bucks a square foot, you can, and we would have a similar deal to that. But my research is telling me that we're right around 675. But this is where the church really wants to make their own decisions. Do they want, I'll be ridiculous here and say, like all the, floors paved in gold? Well, that's going to be a different cost, right? And that's going to limit the building that can be built. And then on the far end of the scale, like, if you want all linoleum and you want a utilitarian, more of a, utilitarian type of building that just functions, well, you're going to end up with more physical structure in that sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, the developer is, he's building the church.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that we have in the church,
Mm-hmm.
the proposal will be from the developer, this is the way it's gonna be.
No. So the developer would,
That's the amount.
the proposal would be, here's the amount of money that based on the deal, and again, the appraisal will be the beginning of that, because then we'll know what the land is actually worth, and that's the beginning of the deal, right? And then we'll go, okay, based on that value, how much money can we put towards a new church? And if we find out that's $1 million and we divide that by $675, I cannot do that math in my head. If somebody else has a phone or somebody, you'd end up with that square footage for me. Yeah. So does that answer the question? Very good. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
When you mentioned that there be multi-family accommodation,
Mm-hmm.
would there be any planning for seniors assisted living? Because so many seniors are being evicted,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of seniors even in our church.
Yes. Yeah. So here's how I'm going to answer that question, and it's probably going to come across as indirect, and yet again, I'm going to say I'm not sure, I don't know yet. This is how I see things playing out, okay? So we put a deal together, and you say, Ryan, please go do this for us. And so I go, all right, first thing I'm going to do is go meet with staff, right, at City Hall. And I'm going to meet probably privately with council, mayor and council, and I'm going to say, where are you guys at? I want to push a little bit here. I want a little bit more. What do you need? And if they say what you say, they say, we really need seniors housing, then we'll go, yeah, well, that gives us the highest chance of getting through this process. I think Brian and I were talking about this, and I had a boss who used to get crazy when I used to do this. I'm just going to tell you all my secrets here, okay? The easiest way to get through land development is do what you're told. This is always the case, right? So if they were to say, yeah, seniors complex is something we really need in particular in that area, it would be just wonderful, then I'm gonna push hard. I cannot, the other thing I've learned in my life, and this is really unfortunate for me, is I cannot make the humans around me do what I want them to do. It would make my life so much easier, especially with my wife. But just kidding, sort of. Anyways, if they came back and said, no, we need rental market housing, then we're probably going to go in that direction, because anything that gives us the highest chance of success of getting through the paperwork and ending up with a development that makes the developer happy enough to carry on with all of this is in everybody's best interest. So can I tell you right now that that's what we're going to do? No. Is it something that I'm open to if it means that we get through the process? 100%. Is that okay? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Like ballpark figure, how long will this paperwork and all this sort of, to phase 3?
Yeah. I'll tell everybody what I tell everybody that ever hires me. This is going to be a real big pain in the butt. Is that polite enough for church? Yeah. Okay. This is literally, we've got all these canned phrases. I'll give you one that we use in my company. This is going to take longer than you want it to. It's going to cost more than you thought it would, and you're going to be mad at me periodically during the process. If you can deal with that, we'll get through this together. But what do I think it's going to take? I would guess 2 years of paperwork and 2 years of construction. That's my guess right now. It could be there's other people. I know there's at least one person in the crowd that has done development before. The land development, I wish, well, this maybe gets back to, I'm glad it doesn't go in a straight line because it makes us more hireable that it's so goofy. But land development is there's a reason very few people do it. It just is really expensive, and it's very frustrating because you will think you're getting somewhere, and then something else comes up, or staff decide to ask for something else, or public starts raising a huge stink, and we have to deal with public opinions to give us the highest chance of success. It's a really difficult thing to pin down. So that my experience is telling me what I told you is probably right, but I know I'm being recorded, so I'll also say, but you can't hold me to that, okay? Yeah, I'll do my best. I promise you that. Mm-hmm.
Based on those timeframes that you just given, so, technically 4 years from start to finish, what happened, like I think right at the beginning, we would decide on valuing things, whatever. Everybody who's ever built anything or had to replace something realizes, boom, all of a sudden huge cost overruns. Where is our protection that we thought we were going to start out with a building of this magnitude and magnificence, and we end up being able to actually afford something significantly lesser? Where does that leave us?
Yeah. I can't predict the market, right? Sometimes a 2x4 costs X, and sometimes it costs Y. We do our best in land development to do pro formas based on the most current information available. How do we protect you and the developer, right? Right? Because they're going to be the ones putting out millions and millions, for sure, 100%, tens of millions of dollars, right? The way I'm going to answer that question is in the legal structure. It would be completely ridiculous to assume that this would be done on a handshake. What we have offered to do is, again, to pay for everything, so we would have our lawyers build a contract at some point, and then the only capital investment that we have discussed so far from the church in any way, shape, or form is to get your legal counsel, the legal representation of the church, to review those documents and make sure that it protects you. Okay? Because I'm being so indirect. Someday I'll have another meeting with all of you and I'll be able to, this is the answer. But it's so early days right now. Does that help you out enough though, ma'am?
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I just want to raise that, people think, oh, what if things change? And yes, things can change, but, protected by our contract,
Yeah.
that consideration goes in right at the front. And you're right, it's not just us being happy. If the developer doesn't think they can make some money on this, they're not going to do it.
Not right away. Right, that to me is the most likely situation, is that, because remember, in simple terms, the developer is proposing to build a church instead of buy the land, right? But there'd be commensurate value there, right? So it would be exceedingly common in the industry that I work for a developer to look at a project and go, we're shutting her down. We're not doing that right now. Right? They've bought the land, or they're paying for the land, but are they building the houses? Maybe not. Right? Maybe they put it on hold for a little while. What I can tell you, though, is under the current circumstances, it seems unlikely. And I can tell you that like we're supposedly in a down market. I think everybody would agree that we're supposedly in housing, right? Well, I don't know much about the stock markets, but I understand they're not doing that great either. But in housing, we're supposedly in a down market. And the reason I'm using the term supposedly, I know that it's true because interest rates are making things more difficult right now. But we're, the primary two companies, as an organization, we're running at any time 500 to 650 projects at any given time. Do you know how many of them have stopped? None. In what is supposedly a bad market right now. We've been fired or told to go pencils down on 0 projects thus far in this supposedly bad market. So things would have to get really bad for something to have this developer go pencils down. But as I said, the big thing is making sure that the paperwork protects both sides of the equation. Okay. Yes, sir.
So I'm thinking in more realistic terms. You were talking $4 million for the property. We're going to build a $9 million church. And if the developer then says, okay, well, we built your church for you,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to take the back half of the property now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still, as a church, in the hole for $5 million, right?
You would be under those circumstances, but I'm not sure where you're getting those
Well, I'm getting
circumstances.
What is the increased value for the property once we have got all of the, like the property, is the property after all of the development proposals, paperwork and everything else, is it gonna be worth more
Mm-hmm.
than the $4 million that's worth half?
So first and foremost, I'm going to say I actually think it's probably worth a lot more than $4 million. Doing land development means adding value almost always. Sometimes we devalue properties through a development process, right? But generally speaking, a development process, in theory and almost always, adds value to your property. You have a property that is 20 acres, it's zoned for 20-acre size lots. You do an OCP amendment, you rezone it, you're allowed to do 500 square meter lots. It's way more valuable, right?
I'm thinking is, what I'm asking is the church gonna get the benefit of the increased value
Mm-hmm.
for the development?
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. So, yes and no. So, as we talked about earlier, we're going to cap profit. The 4 developers that I've spoken to are open to this, to capping profit. So if there was excess profit, then the church would benefit from that increased value, okay? But I am not going to have a discussion with one of the developers where I say, when you do this, this land is going to be more valuable, so therefore you owe the church more money. Because in simple terms, it's just not how it's done. In fact, I see countless deals fall apart because, and I'm going to apologize to any realtors in the room right now, but because a realtor told somebody that when the developer is done with their $1 million property, it's going to be worth $2 million, and so then the seller wants $2 million, and the developer is going, but all my profit is gone. It's going to cost me, $500,000 to get there, right? So I cannot, and I won't, to be very blunt, I don't want there to be any misunderstandings, look at something and say, because we go through these processes, which are not free, right, we're going to give anybody, not a church, not a landholder of any kind, the value that the developer is going to add to the property. It just doesn't work that way. Like I said, the only thing I ever see in that is a deal falling apart, because
That's what I wanted to kind of broach is where are we going with the,
this is very similar to that same question that was asked when you and Brian and I were meeting that time. And it was one of the developers that I want to introduce to the church that said, why don't we do it this way? Why don't we say, I'm content to make this much money. Once I make that much money, boom, back, the rest goes to the church. Okay?
Back to the church as a, or like a share, a profit sharing at that point, like he makes his thing and then we share it, what, you know?
Yeah, all I can tell you right now is that what we've said is that CRU building. So let's say that there was an extra $3 million, then that could buy some form of an additional building on the church's portion of the property. Commercial retail unit. Yeah. Sorry, yes. Didn't think, yeah, forest in the trees, you know. Never trust the professor that wrote the textbook. No. No. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
As I talked to you a little bit before, I just wanted everybody to know with regards to the church exemption, tax exemption, whether it's going to affect when we start renting out a portion of the property for residential purposes.
I need to be careful with this because I used to be an assessor and an appraiser, and in Ontario I was a property tax consultant, but Ontario is a lot different than British Columbia. What I can tell you is my impression is, but this should be researched by the church just to make sure that I'm correct. The use at the end of the day is not changing for the portion of the church that would remain in the new church and everything. So my understanding is the way that the church is taxed now would be exactly the same as the new church would be taxed in the future. The only difference with that is, let's say we do a CRU building there, and it has a commercial component or a retail component. That's different, right? What may also be different, though, is it, see, commercial is a funny word. Like, does that mean a soup kitchen that feeds the poor? Then that might be taxed differently again. But it's not my area of expertise. So it's definitely, though, the question is very legitimate, and the church needs to be aware of this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ryan, if I could jump in there on that one. So the idea was that whether it's added to the main building or a secondary building, that would be used for a church ministry, daycare ministry area. So it would fall under, the building itself would technically be a commercial building because that's how it's built, but we would still be utilizing it as ministry. So it could be counseling underneath the umbrella of the church. That's the idea. It could be a daycare, it could be whatever. Right? It could be where the kitchen, whatever, but it's all part of under the ministry.
Sure. Yes, sir.
And just to be clear, Mark, as well, like, if it goes forward with how it's been laid out, and just for clarity, the new church building, so if we have 2 acres, we're taking on half an acre. As an example, that's now Westwinds, is that half acre. The rest is no longer our property. Yeah. The rest is another development, a building, a housing unit, so that has nothing to do with church status. That's us. If there's additional profits, potentially, that's where there may be another building that we would have a shared use of commercial type source or something, correct? Like, there's right now, how it was laid out, there was a new church building built, that's the new Westwinds.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
If there's the additional, and then you would throw it in that other building, and potentially, if there was some deals worked out with the developers, if there was additional profits, we may have another building.
Yeah, which is an extension.
Correct,
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially not in the plans, but hopefully the other building would maintain the preschool or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. I saw another hand. Yes, sir.
I was just curious if your company has had any of these kind of projects, church projects in the province?
Yeah, my first project ever, and it's how we met, wasn't it? It was. Was that Maxwell? Yeah. So my first, like, literally, like 9 of my first 10 jobs were like directly for churches or for like pastors or reverends. I used to keep looking up, going, I get it. You know. So yes, we've done a number of churches. Yeah.
But under this kind of proposal?
No. To be honest with you, what happened to me is it's a bit of a story. Do you mind? And I'll explain where my mindset was on this. is people assume I'm wealthy because of what I do. I'm not. Like, we do okay. You know, don't get me wrong. My kids, you know, have food in their bellies, and you know, we're doing okay. But because of what I do, people assume I have millions and millions of dollars, and I don't. Thousands, sometimes even hundreds of dollars. You know, but we're associated with people that do have millions and millions and millions of dollars. And what happened was a couple years ago, I brokered a deal for one of my clients. He had bought a property. The numbers are unbelievable for a number down here. And I brokered a deal for him way, way up here 6 months later. And I charged him a tiny percentage to do that. But what I found was a tiny percentage of a huge number was for Ryan Anderson a pretty good sized number. So we started putting deals like this together more often. So we've got about 5 of these types of deals at this point, where for doing everything we can without charging anybody, we take a small percentage of a project. So that's where we ended up. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just as a comparison, Mark, how many square feet is this building?
I think it's on one of the plans.
Yeah, I can't remember, to be honest with you. I got all the numbers and they're all mungled in my head.
New building gonna be
Half. Half of this.
it's only half.
Well, because the usable space in here is horrific. And so it would be more usable space, but less.
I think it says right there. I just don't have good enough eyes to read it.
No, it's like, obviously there's a meeting area, but the issue is, like, that comes in the design later with the architects
Yeah.
and all that, but the idea originally was an office area,
Okay,
an
sorry.
open area,
Yeah.
universal open with maybe a wall divider to expand or whatever, that kind of thing, but like a conference center type. But I mean, that's far ahead, right? That's in the planning of the actual design that the architects deal with. And that's where your stuff comes in, and you start, this is what we want.
And it's up to the church. If the church wants, you know, a huge church, that's fine. But we have to do it based on the values as discussed. Like, the value of the land will be the beginnings of that deal. And like I said, you know, if the church wanted gold, you know, doorknobs and slate tile through everything, that's going to be more expensive, and it's going to start diminishing the square footage, right? Unless, again, the church wants to top things up. Yes, ma'am.
This question might be more for Mark and the building committee. When we heard about this brilliant plan a year ago, my heart was just pounding. How exciting. But now I kind of get the feeling, I don't know. So we end up with a church building that basically does what our current church building does. But I was under the impression that we wanted to do more. We wanted a counseling center, maybe a daycare, maybe a community kitchen, maybe all those things. But now I'm hearing that that might not happen. That might not happen.
No, it's not that it might not happen, it's where do you put it in that space? And so that's where the designing comes. That's where we need to know the value of what we're working with Ryan, so that then we can go, okay, so we want this much space, we want all this stuff in it. So that's what you're thinking is we still want to do ministry plus some. So we want to do it in that usable space, right? So of just that first one, yeah. Ignore the other one, that's a bonus. That's like a, hey, right on, we could do even more.
Right, but that doesn't mean that we won't be able to do the original objectives.
No. So, and you could expand that building. Again, those drawings aren't right on the money, right? Yeah.
No.
So it would look bigger, it could look bigger, the way you divide up the space would be where you would be thinking ministry, vision, this is what we want to do for the community. So we want a proper kitchen, which we want maybe counseling offices, we want, you want a daycare, so where does that go? And that's what the architect would get from us, as in this is what we want to put in there. How big do we need it? Yeah.
So there will be a plan.
Yes, you'd see it before it would go anywhere. You would see it before anything.
And so would Ryan.
Yeah.
So he knows what he's getting himself into.
Oh, he knows.
Yeah. And I really want to stress that one point is the church, like paying for the architectural design and all that type of thing. Yeah, the developer and building it out. That's the developer, right? But what that church looks like, what goes into that church, the size of the building, the size of the rooms, the use of the rooms, everything is going to be you guys.
So who would have the final say then? What if the developer says, no, I'm not using it?
Yeah. So my understanding of that is going to be the building committee is who will make the final decision. And there will be people that will not like it. You know, I promise you. I've never gone to any meeting along these lines and walked out and said, man, everybody liked me. You know. I convinced everybody. Everybody thinks I'm a genius. You know, it's just not how humans work. You know, it's it's a digression, but it's always almost been like a proof that there is a God, that all of our brains are so different. You would think that there'd be two humans on this planet that thought the same, but I have not met two yet. You know, there must be divine intervention to allow for that. So, but it's at the end of the day, the most important thing is the church in through the building committee and through consultation will have the final say.
And know that all those drawings are just footprints, right? They're not the final thing. So it could be pushed, like you said, there could be an easement, so we got to move it. It could be expanded. If that's 9,000 square feet, and we say, we really want 12, and he's going to be, okay, but that's another couple thousand square feet times 600 and whatever square meter or whatever. So it's all in what you want to do, right? So if the value of the building is worth 10 million and you want to build an $11 million one, you're paying $1 million. But if you want to put an $8 million building in and it's 10, you get, it works like that.
And the other
Dirty
thing
math.
to consider within this as well is the parking facility is not free either, right? Parking facilities are very expensive. So there will be a balance to see how all that plays out as well. Like right now, I might be wrong on this, but we normally say $20,000 a stall, but I believe it's more than that right now. I think I'm a little bit behind on my numbers there. So, is that what you heard for real? Did you? Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. A lot of costs have really gone up. Even just a few years ago, we used to do wells at $46 a linear foot. They're over $100 a linear foot now. So it wouldn't surprise me that you're correct.
And they do this parking all throughout, so you'll know in Willoughby, we do a lot of fire inspections there, and a lot of they have divisions within, so there'll be one big apartment block, and they get this area, and the other apartment block gets this area, and the only way through is through fire fobs and all that kind of stuff, so you don't get to go in their zone, and that's a possibility too down there. So it's shared underground space, and it's very well laid out. Yeah.
I remember when we sold back a portion of the property, all that parking stuff, I remember.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. We did it.
Mark, I'm not sure why you're talking about shared underground space if the underground parking will be under our church. Who are we sharing with? You lost me there.
So the drawing showed the entire lot possibly with underground, right? With the apartment. Yeah.
Okay, not underground parking under the church.
Yep. As well. Yeah. I mean, again, that's a drawing. Well, there you go.
Sorry.
I was like, wow, those Catholics are fast. But yeah, that was an idea that they're going with. And
You should see me walk on water.
You better step away from the pulpit. Well, yeah, that holds. He was giving an idea of if they can get all that parking underground, we would share, and then that would be part of it. But again, that's in the end.
Yeah, and I want to
Who
be clear
knows?
about something too. Like I like parking is the everything for what you can do in your built form, right? So it could be that there's even a reciprocal access agreement and there's enough parking on the surface to accommodate the church's parking requirements, and that's that. And that might be a decent way to go from the church's perspective because they get to put more money into the building as opposed to the parking structure, right? So that might be an idea worth pursuing. In fact, I think it probably is an idea worth pursuing, balancing those two things. But there could be a reciprocal access agreement where that parking that goes underneath allows, and again, like the way the deal is at least theoretically structured right now, you want the developer to do really, really well, right? Because if the developer does really, really well, then eventually there's monies that get poured back into the church. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, was that not done? Should I wait? Okay, okay. Yes, sir, sorry.
So underground parking based on the water table and easements and everything, we gotta change the construction, structure then, right? We'd have to go underground, or demo this building, underground parking, then level out the ground, build this building, build the, residential.
This is. I'll be honest with you. This is where I get a little bit lost because I'm not an engineer. But I've spoken to the engineers and said, okay, can we theoretically build a church with an underground parking structure, then tear everything down, rip everything else out, dig a big hole, and then attach all of that parking together? And the answer was yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir.
You were saying the building cost is about $667 a square.
What I've heard is 675.
Somewhere in there. Would that include the parking?
Oh, gosh. You know what? I'm going to go with the honest truth is I don't know. I'm going to go with I don't think so, right? The parking would probably be in addition to that. And that's where I was saying to that lady over there is there may be a balance for the church. And again, if we can get somewhere with a deal, I think the first thing to do is meet with staff, but also complete some of that research and see where those parking ratios lie. Because it might be in the best interest of the church to maybe have no underground parking or a smaller percentage of underground parking with a reciprocal access agreement that allows the multifamily or whatever building on the other side to do a little bit better. I don't know yet. But all of that is that big balance of everything.
So looking at that type of a cost, a 9,000 square foot building
Mm-hmm.
would cost about $6 million.
Mm-hmm. I'm saying yes as if I know that. I don't. Yeah, I'll take your word for it. Yeah.
That's what it's worth. So
Yeah.
if our land value was worth, say, $5 million, and you were gonna do that, now
Right.
it's gonna cost you $6, would we be mortgaging the other million?
No, we would be balancing it out. Yeah. In all honesty, though, again, I'm going to say that nobody can hold me to this because I don't have a crystal ball, you know. And what we're hearing is that in the next little while, interest rates will probably go up, but then we'll realize that that's not working for what it was supposed to do, which it is totally, absolutely not doing, right? And then things should come back down to normal. Maybe not COVID normal, where, you know, people got locked in at 1.43 and 1.6 and stuff like this. But, you know, the more normal things that most of us that have bought and sold houses over the years are used to, you know, 4s and stuff like that, right? So do I see a good chance that the land will be valued under that? Not super. In fact, I have my own guess, which I will not utter out loud right now, what this is worth, and that'll be our starting point, and it's a number quite a bit above $5 million.
I know what we could do. Jerry, you give 20 grand, we'll give you a free parking spot. With your name on it and everything. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, 35,000, going twice.
Yeah, that's a discount from what I just heard. Yeah.
Me and Mike will buy it, but we need to make sure there's height, regulations for how tall.
Yeah.
For our trucks, yeah.
Well, we'll put an Airbnb clause in the strata too.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
This is probably more for Mark, and this is not a slight on you at all.
All right, slide on me or slide on Mark? Oh, that's good.
I want to know, on the building committee, is there or will there be someone who's kind of maybe a consultant or knowledgeable, and that's, because we don't know nothing.
So Brian is the chair right now, and he'll be building that committee. But right now, as far as the committee goes, it's just been gathering information.
Data gathering right now, we're way early on the process, as Ryan was saying.
Yeah.
But the key thing, I think, is two things. One, Marcus put on the website there any questions that you want to know, anybody's got experience in some specific area request to whether bring forth, email information to that, I'll pick it up. We'll start to slot positions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because if we don't know what questions to ask, you know, maybe Ryan would think, oh, well, they don't know that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that, again, it's not slighting you too. I know you know it sounds
Yeah.
very much like you know.
It'll be full transparency at all times, and it has been what we knew. We just, because we were gathering data, to say anything concrete would be, I think it would be misleading. And that's because there was lots of times we were throwing thoughts around and they went nowhere. So it's like, okay, forget that, right? So we're just trying to, what can we do? How can we do it? Yeah, but transparency has been there as far as, we're concerned because we don't know any more than you did. So until now that we're bringing this, right? So I think as things move forward, you'll get more information because more is happening, right? So if he's doing more work, you're going to get to know what that is as, and you'd have that. And I know the board has talked about this, timely meetings, information going out. We wanted to be as wise as we could with what information we had without giving, because even I said it, but we've said it'll cost you nothing. Well, that's not true. It's always going to cost in the end, but right now it won't. Like there might be some things, but like there are some things covered, there are some things not covered, and we're figuring that out. Yeah.
Is it okay if I add to that just a little bit? The one thing that I want everybody to be aware of is you're not my client, but you're my client, right? Because to be my client, we'd have a contract where you're paying me to do research and make applications and design buildings and blah blah blah. What I mean by that, though, is my obligation is to make sure the church does well here. And remember, like, altruism is a funny word, right? Like, there's a reason I want the church to be super satisfied, because I don't want this to be the only one that I do. I want, Mark and Patrick and everybody else from the congregation to go tell, every denomination and, maybe even some atheists, whatever thing they go to. But, that I did good, and that you were happy with it at the end of it. I believe the term is my fiduciary duty is to the church, and you are who I represent. There will be overlap at some point where I'm going to try and manage both parties. But this is why, like, and there's one individual I'll never ever say the name. I love him, I absolutely love him. But would I bring him to you? No, I would not, right? Because he would make sure he did really well, and he would try and throw enough of a bone towards you that you'd be satisfied with it, or that he could get away with it. In a place like this, that makes him a bad person, But that's just how humans generally work, right? And unfortunately, most of the people that we work for got very wealthy by being a particular way, right? But the four that I've picked, I don't feel like they're gonna, and I'm not guessing. I've dealt with them on multiple projects, and we've tried to put deals together. And I'm comfortable that they know that this has to work for everybody, and there needs to be enough meat on the bone for everybody.
So just so I understand, so how you are being compensated is the fact that you are going to attract the people who are actually going to do the work for us, and then you will be compensated by them as a percentage of their overall success of the thing. So you are doing things for us right now because you like us, as you are, but we are never
I do.
paying you directly.
No, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's important, that everybody understands this, is that we get hired predominantly to manage projects, to be consultants, to be project managers. And generally speaking, I'm paid by the hour for that, and my staff is paid by the hour to complete projects. That's how we generally work. In this situation, in my mind, I'm sort of breaking it into two things, where I'm saying, okay, look, normally we would take a fee for everything that we're offering to do. Like, for instance, we've already surveyed the property, right? Normally we would send you an invoice for the survey, right? We completed the survey. When you want the final documents, we're gonna send you an invoice. When you pay the invoice, we're gonna give you the survey. In this situation, I'm saying to myself, no, we're not gonna do that. I'm gonna survey the property. There's not much here, but I'm gonna have my biologist, my arborist come out and take a look at things, right? We're gonna do some drawings, right? We're gonna, hire an appraiser. We're gonna spend, pay for our staff to come out and do survey work. And if this carries on and we have a deal and I take this project the whole way, then what I'm saying to myself is, okay, normally I would make, from all the companies I own, I would make X dollars in total, right? Instead of doing it that way, I'm gonna make a percentage, which should be, to be blunt, probably a little bit more than I otherwise would have made. But you have to remember, I'm also taking tremendous risk myself, and I've still got money going out the door, right? My staff member, they're really nice and they love me, but they won't work for free. They're funny that way. And so I have to do it that way. But then the other thing is I'm bringing a developer to the situation, and a developer that, in my opinion, and you guys will meet him. Is that right? Will everybody meet him? I hope so. Yeah. And you can take a look at them and decide, is this person come across as trustworthy to me? Is this person saying the things that we're comfortable with proceeding with? And when you're me, and you find projects for people, in simple terms, there's something called a finder's fee. And so that's the balance of the fee that I've proposed, is the balance of, okay, we're gonna do everything at cost, and I brought this developer, and the developer is gonna compensate for me for bringing in a good project. That's how I'm gonna get paid, but that's all gonna be done by the developer. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I just want to thank you for all this hard work you did. And for me personally, you've instilled a tremendous amount of confidence.
Oh,
So I appreciate that.
that's nice to hear. Thank you. I'll let my mother know. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just a question on timelines. Understanding we're at phase one, kind of just kind of going through the preliminary, understanding what the project may look like, and maybe more so for the board. What phase will we move into where, as a congregation, as members, we will decide on whether or not we're actually moving forward or not? Do we have a timeline on that? What phase is that? Can't give me the same, Brad.
So we're just chatting, secret stuff. I'm kidding. AGM is coming up, and so I believe that there will be the board's going to meet, and then there will be something at the AGM that you will look at after having all this information today, and you can decide at that meeting if you go to the next step. Does that answer?
Well, kind of, yeah. I mean, obviously, there's obviously a number of questions about what's our land value, what's an actual church going to look like how much money will we have to spend to build a church? I mean, all
Yeah.
of those questions are important
Yeah.
to make those decisions. So if by the AGM we have that information.
I don't know if we'll have it by the 5th of November, but
What does it look like? Well,
will you?
okay, so
I doubt it.
Yeah.
It's just so short.
forward regardless of what that looks like? I think it's a big step, and I think we need that information prior to making that final decision to move forward.
So in order to get the value for the people, what stage, is that in 2 or is that now?
It's a now.
Okay,
Because
so you'll have it, not before the AGM though. It'll probably be after where you would meet.
So all I was going to say is that's the beginning of the thought process, right? Because in simple terms, again, the way we're looking at this is instead of a developer coming and buying your land, the developer is saying, I think your land is worth this, so I'm going to build you a church instead, right? In my mind, there's only one place to start. Well, everybody, if I ask, if we all went and had coffee individually, I'd get however many people are in here, I'd get that many different numbers as to what the value of the land would be. And then, of course, the developer is gonna, so for lack of a better term, to keep everybody honest, we get a professional involved and have them appraise the property. The interesting thing about the appraisal would be the direction, and bearing in mind I used to be an appraiser, right? So generally speaking, an appraisal is not done on what could it be worth, right? But in this situation, I think we would give some direction to say, okay, look, this is where we're at, right? This is what we're doing. So wherever your professionalism allows you to look at the land in that way, then let's look at the land that way. So the scope of work, I think, is something that will need to be discussed as well. But in simple terms, yeah, start with an appraisal. You know, like I said, I've got a pretty good guess as to what the land's probably going to be worth at the end of the day. And then, assuming everybody's comfortable with that, everybody won't be, but majority, right? And the developer on the other side, then we'll start from there.
So I have a question for you, Ryan. Thank you for all your information. It's more to the board, just saying like, so we're looking at this project, tell me if I'm wrong or not, because we can't financially sustain what we currently have because of the age of the building
Yeah.
and our finances.
Yes.
That's technically why we're looking at this. So just a reminder to all of us that if we can't sustain what we have and we choose not to move forward, I'm not saying Ryan's, but anything else, like how do we do that?
Right.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
This is why, like, within the appraisal, I don't know this, but how old is this building?
Yeah,
So we're
it's old.
53 years old.
Yeah.
I might be wrong about this, but has anybody looked into what this building is valued at this point?
I know what the assessed value is.
It is 200,000. Is that right?
Well, the entire property or just the building?
Just the building, 'cause
well, it's a deep appreciated or deep. Yeah,
it's a
a lot.
depreciated asset.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I was going to say. After 53 years, the building probably maintains a zero value or close to. Yeah.
Yeah, and throwing money into boilers and into unsustainable parking lots and all that kind of stuff is not going to sustain even another 10. So 5. It's just old. And it's awesome. It's paid its dues.
So do we have to make a decision at the AGM, or could we wait for the appraisal?
Well, he won't have it. We won't have the information for you to make the decision. Yeah. So as soon as they gather all the information, give it to the board would look at that with the, everything they need to do, and then that would be a special meeting that they would call, and then you would come and have a special meeting to vote to move forward in order to start making these things actually. That's when the rubber hits the road. There would be a contract, yeah. Yeah. And that could take a couple meetings to sort all that out, right? And then maybe another town hall, I don't know.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Like I said, the offer that I've made to the church generally is that we'll pay for everything except for the legal fees that are specific to you, which I don't think we're even allowed to pay your legal fees. There'd be a conflict, I believe. So, yeah. Your lawyer needs to represent you. Yeah. Anybody else?
Does that sound good? All right. Well, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Thank you for all your time. I would like to give him a clap because, as you know, we've been meeting a lot and talking a lot, and he is very easy to talk to, and he does not hide anything, and when he says he doesn't know, and that's what you want. So I'm going to pray to